$150,000 and $800,000 a year. Those are good jobs. That our children are, my grandchildren are all in other states, but the children of this state should have an opportunity of becoming a doctor, an MD. And to my mind, it's a problem of both parties to get enough medical schools in Arizona to teach 1,900 MDs a year. Now, what's being done about that?
Well, your point again is well taken. The problem is, whenever you move toward in a direction of government control, you have less and less people that want to be doctors, less and less people that want to be nurses. And I think that we probably underestimate the danger of that in this bill as much as anything else, that it will make good doctors and nurses simply decide to do something different. And so I'm very concerned about your points.
Congressman, that doesn't answer the question, because under the Republican Party, in fact, Laddie Kura, who was president of the ASU, wanted to have a med school there like you could paste it. And the politicians said, Tucson was promised a medical school, it's in Zen South. To my mind, that is as much a Republican policy as a Democrat policy, and it should be changed. And
probably the Republicans or the Democrats shouldn't be controlling the educational system. If the market did that, because we need more doctors and nurses, the market would respond in a much better way than some decision on high from Washington. That may be part of the problem. Maybe government's already just telling who gets the medical school. We should, I'll chase a rabbit here if I'm not careful. The reality is that our college system is still the best in the world because at least part of it is privatized. But the private colleges and the private instructional institutions do more to give us professionals than any of the government-run institutions that I've seen. And I just have to tell you, I think part of that problem can be laid at the government's feet, and I think Republicans and Democrats have to take their share of the blame. Let's go over here. The line's a little long over here.
Thank you for taking my question. I'm Nathan Brown from Peoria, and I was wondering if you'd be supporting Congressman Ron Paul's House Resolution 63, amending the rules of the House of Representatives to ensure that members have reasonable amount of time to read legislation that will be voted on.
I absolutely support that, and we tried to do that. We tried to ask that. Absolutely, yes. No question about it. We tried to do that. We've never been able to even get the opportunity to vote on that rule. So that's really a scary thing.
You mentioned in that bill that it's the largest expansion of abortion ever, and that it's taxpayer-funded, mandated abortion, which is supposed to be illegal in this country. And that's an outrage. One thing that I find outrageous is the current situation that taxpayers all need to be outraged about is the fact that currently, right now, every year, $350 million of our taxpayer money is given by Congress to Planned Parenthood, the largest abortion provider in this country. I know you're well aware, I know you're against it. When all they do is they knowingly, willfully disobey laws, and they harm women and children for profit. How did we get there? What can be done about that? And can we get a commitment from the Republicans and Democrats that want to get reelected that it's one thing to say you're against that bill, but once they've already started doing it, say, no, we'll take this out, we'll take that out. The real terrorists start wanting to negotiate. Can we get a commitment that you will not negotiate with real terrorists that are trying to hijack the government of this country? What's the real purpose of that bill?
Well, what you're saying is related to Planned Parenthood and $350 million a year. That's about right. People are paying that money to give to them. The first act of the Obama administration of any consequence was to send taxpayers' money overseas, and this is in the midst of an economic meltdown, to pay for abortions overseas. And so I don't know how to deal with that mindset. It's a tragedy that beggars description, and I just have to say to you, in the final analysis, when it's all the history's been written, our attitude towards the innocent will be the biggest consideration. We didn't build the Marble Mausoleum down on the Potomac for Abraham Lincoln because he balanced the budget. We did it because he saw the spark of life, the imago Dei, the image of God, in a group of people the Supreme Court said wasn't human.
Okay, I just want to point out, some of the people here have been waiting so long they sat down. That's why the line looks short.
Okay.
Congressman, my name is Wayne Kendall. I live in Sun City West. I've been a public school educator at this city since 1960. Now retired. I'd like a little historical insight from you. Obviously, you've been preaching to the choir here, whatever choir is left. And it's no secret to all of us that Republicans lost the presidency and control of the Congress. So be as specific as you can. And with my short memory, I'd like to be refreshed. Why and how did that happen?
Well, you know, you make a really good point. I think that there are probably three things that I would mention. Number one, historically, after a party's been in power for a time, that second election in the second term, where the president and both houses of Congress are of one party, usually that party takes a terrible bath. And I think this country was war-weary, because, you know, that happens. Nobody likes war, but unfortunately, I think that we forgot that this last president, President Bush, for whatever you might give him trouble over, he did keep us safe. And I think the policies, I would say there's one of the policies of a previous administration that created what we call the Community Reinvestment Act, that really put pressure on banks to make loans that weren't very sound. A lot of these subprime loans that were made. And then what happened is the business community came in thinking that those were sound loans. And they created all these derivatives and a lot of investment. And they built a house of cards on fundamentally unstable assets. And that was essentially because the Democrat Congress came up with these ideas of these trying to force banks to make loans that they thought would help the poor. But unfortunately, it ended up hurting the poor more than anything else. So we had this terrible economic meltdown. And I think that hurt Republicans in a great way, too. But let me say this to you. Republicans made more than their share of mistakes. We said that we were the party of fiscal conservatism. When people like me tried to vote that way, we were said, well, we were outside of the mainstream. Some of us did vote like we promised, but not the whole party. And I think that hurt us. And I hope that when we get back in power, and I hope we do, that we remember who we were and should have been in the first place. Thank you.
Been living in the Valley for a long time, and one thing I can say is that you've always been true to your word. And I got to give you credit. You got to have a set of stone will inside of you to stand in front of such an outraged and informed electorate right now. So kudos to you for that. My question deals mostly with cap and trade, or as we refer to it now, cap and tax. I understand that your hands have already been in it. If you're washed of it now, it moves on to the Senate. What can we do to look forward to stopping anything for, as far as cap and tax goes? And as a side, what was the debate within the House on how they could let it go or how they could make it stick?
Well, in the House, we didn't get to debate it at all. They made a rule that we couldn't offer any amendment to that monstrosity, and it was the largest tax increase in the history of the human species. And so I want you to understand that a lot of us were very outraged about that. The president promised that he wouldn't increase taxes except on the very wealthy. This raises taxes on everyone that turns on a light switch or buys a gallon of gas. I mean, it is a disaster, and it has almost no redeeming quality. It doesn't do anything of an effective nature to prevent pollution, and it is just a complete disaster. So, I mean, I screamed and voted no and tried to vote twice no. You know how those things are. And they just overpowered us in the House. They wouldn't let any amendments, and they voted on it. And Nancy Pelosi is, you know, capable of just saying, forget it, we're not going to let them do anything, we're going to pass it no matter what. In the Senate, the rules are a little different. It's important that you contact your senators and make sure that they don't vote for that thing, because it is a very, very dangerous thing, and it will be another pile of bricks on this poor little economy that we have. And it could be that you never know when that straw is going to break the camel's back. You know, so thank you.
Congressman, my name is Jason. As a person of 21 years old, I want to know what about the deficit. How are we supposed to know what the deficit is going to be? 50 years ago, $1 trillion seemed like an unimaginable number. It was imaginary. Today, it's what we owe. We owe 12 times that number. What is it going to be 50 years from now when I retire and when I have to make after I've made my sacrifice? What is that imaginary number going to be?
Well, that's a wonderful, very powerful and poignant question. I've been asking it since I was 21 years old. And it really frightens me, my friend. You know, I said that earlier, that the debt that we're piling up in this country, it seems like Congress thinks they can just repeal the laws of mathematics, and they can't. There is a day when reckoning will occur. And here's what I think they will probably try to do, and it would be devastating for the country. they will try to monetize it like they've done in other countries. They'll just print all the money